Today, I am going to be showing you how to install your new front seat hinges on your Kawasaki Mule Pro. To start, remove the front seat from the Mule, flip it over, and with the front of the seat facing you, set it down on a flat surface in preparation to install the two hinge plates. Line up the hinge plates with the 8 mounting points on the bottom of the seat as shown here. Then using the 8 3/4-inch number 12 screws, and with a drill and driver or a screwdriver, secure the plates to the bottom of the seat. Be careful not to over-tighten these screws to prevent stripping out the mounting points. Now that we have the hinge plates secured to the bottom of the seat, let's go out to the Mule and install the hinges. On some Mule models, the retaining clip for the fuel line is installed in such a way that it will interfere with the operation of the passenger side hinge. If the fuel line runs above the mounting screw on your Mule, it will have to be removed and reinstalled, with the fuel line running below the mounting screw. Using a 10mm socket, remove the retaining clip, reverse its position, and reinstall as shown. In preparation for installing the passenger side hinge, you will need to attach the gapping tool to the hinge. The gapping tool gets attached to the top of the hinge using the forward hole, the hole closest to the pivot point on the hinge. Due to variations in the powder coating and hole size, sometimes the gapping tool can be difficult to snap into place. If this happens, you can use a pair of pliers or channel locks to help secure it to the hinge. You just need to make sure it is lined up correctly before clamping it down. Place the hinge on top of the passenger side crossbar with the pivot point on the hinge facing forward. Make sure that the hinge is snug against the outside of the crossbar and that the gapping tool is snug against the front support post. Using a hammer and a nail set, make a divot in the center of the rear elongated hole in preparation for drilling the screw hole in the crossbar. If you don't have a nail set, you can use a nail or a pointed screw as a substitute. Using the divot as a guide and the provided 1/8-inch drill bit, pre-drill the screw hole. Once the hole is drilled, you can install one of the 3/4-inch self-tapping screws. When doing this, use the lower speed option on your drill to prevent damage to the threaded hole. Do not over-tighten this screw, as doing so could also damage the new threads in the crossbar. Once the rear screw is tight and secure, and there is no movement in the hinge, you can remove the gapping tool and set it aside. You will need it again for the driver's side hinge. Now repeat the divot, the pre-drill, and the screw installation for the middle and front screws. Again, as a reminder, use the lower speed option on your drill when installing the screws and do not over-tighten the screws to prevent damage to the threads in the crossbar. It is suggested that when installing the self-tapping screws, once the screw is finished cutting the hole and the threads start to take hold, that you pause the drilling operation, then restart to finish setting the screw. This will give you more control over how tight you set the screw and can help with accidental over-tightening and help prevent damage to the newly threaded crossbar. Now that you have all 3 mounting screws installed and secure, lift the hinge to the forward position and install the spring as shown. Keep a tight hold on the spring until it is attached at both ends to prevent the spring from falling down under the gas tank. Ask me how I know. Once the spring is installed, take one of the 6mm nylon washers and install it on the exposed threaded stud. Now that the passenger side hinge is installed, you will need to repeat the process on the driver's side before moving on to the next step. Now, with both the passenger side and driver's side hinges installed, and making sure that you have installed nylon washers on both exposed studs, place the seat on the floor in the well with the front of the seat facing down. You will need to raise the steering wheel all the way up and position yourself on the passenger side of the Mule. Now you can lift the seat up and hook the pivot hole in the driver's side hinge plate onto the exposed stud on the driver's side hinge, sliding it all the way down. Now, holding the seat with your right hand, use your left hand to push the pivot bar on the passenger side hinge just enough so that you can set the exposed stud inside the hole on the passenger side plate as shown. Now, in this order, place a 6mm nylon washer, then a 6mm steel washer, and finally a 6mm self-locking nut onto the exposed stud on the passenger side hinge. Using a 10mm socket, tighten the self-locking nut all of the way to snug. Once the nut is snug, back it off about a quarter turn. If tensioned correctly, the seat will balance on its own, and once pushed forward, it will fully open on its own. If it won't balance on its own, the nut is too loose. If it won't open on its own, then the nut is too tight. When fine-tuning this, make small adjustments until the hinge is operating correctly. On the driver's side, again, in this order place, a 6mm nylon washer, then a 6mm steel washer, and finally a 6mm self-locking nut onto the exposed stud on the driver's side hinge. Using a 10mm socket, tighten the self-locking nut all of the way to snug. Once the nut is snug, back it off about a quarter turn. Again, use the same method of tensioning the driver's side hinge that you use for the passenger side hinge. If it won't balance on its own, the nut is too loose. If it won't open on its own, then the nut is too tight. And again, when fine-tuning, remember to only make small adjustments until the hinge is operating correctly. The last thing you need to do is to remove the rubber retainer grommet from the passenger side of the mule. Just grab a hold of it and give it a good tug. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and again, thank you for your purchase from Little Mule Off-Road. If you have any questions about your install, they can be directed to the Contact Us page on littlemuleoffroad.com. We hope you have a good day, and God bless.